Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to be looking at this preamp pedal from Joyo, the Rigel preamp. Stay tuned. Okay guys, so today I'm going to keep things pretty simple and straightforward. This pedal here from Joyo, I think retails for something like 60 bucks on Amazon, and it is technically a copy of the KSR Ceres, but only the high gain channel on that preamp pedal. Now, if you know anything about that preamp pedal, you know it's kind of an expensive pedal. This isn't. Let's listen to it. You know, it's literally meant just for high gain. You're not getting clean tones. I mean, you might be able to get a little bit of crunch out of this, but it's really meant for the chuggy chugs. So what I really want to do is I want to run it three ways. Now, you can use this as a distortion pedal in front of an amp. I don't think that's the best way to use it. I think it's meant to be its own standalone preamp pedal. It's meant to kind of take over the drive channel on your amp. So I'm going to run it into the power section of this EVH amp. You know, this is a 6L6 loaded power amp. And then I'm going to also try it out in this Blackstar Amped 1 solid state power amp combo thing, which has response curves for different tube types baked into it. In playing with this, I do think that the 6L6 curve or response, whatever they have applied to the power section of this amp, is the best sounding one, especially for high gain. So we'll probably use that. And then just for fun, I think I'm going to plug this straight into my interface and run it into IR and see how it sounds as like its own little, you know, preamp that you can use for recording at home. So first up, we're going to use the tube power section of this amp, and it's going into a 212 cab down here that's loaded with an Eminence DV77 and a Celestion Redback. Now, what I have mic'd up with the SM57 is the DV77, so that's what you're going to hear. So to start with just the pedal, I'm going to keep the EQ, bass, middle, treble all up at noon. I'm going to keep the drive at noon. I have the volume set up where I need it for recording. There are three switches on here. There is a feel switch, which kind of attenuates the low end response of the preamp. If you go in the middle, it's the most tight. If you go up, it's a little looser. And then on the bottom is the most loose. The mod switch is basically your gain stage. Up at the top, you have a crunchy kind of low gain thing. In the middle, a high gain rhythm, and then on the bottom, it's supposed to be more of a focused high gain lead tone. And then the third switch is a bright switch. If you have it on, you know, you get a lot more top end. If you have it off, it's not so much top end. So I'm gonna start like that, and then we'll kind of go from there. So right off the bat, the crunchy tone, it's pretty crunchy. If I take the drive down, you know, to where it's barely breaking up. There's really no way to clean it up. It's not meant to do that. So I'll put the drive back up. On this crunch setting, you can kind of boost it with, you know, a pedal and get a little bit more of like that driven Marshall sound. In fact, I'll do that with the SD1 real quick. But with that feel switch in the middle, it's really tight. So I'm going to put it down to the most loose feeling feel that they have on here to see what that sounds like. Yeah, the feel switch is kind of an interesting one because it's kind of counterintuitive for me to have the most like attenuated one in the middle and then have to kind of bounce between a little bit more saggy and then fully saggy at the bottom. And it's kind of hard to tell probably through the mic, but in the room there is a definite low end response shift. And let me see if I can capture that a little bit. I'm gonna turn the boost off. It's definitely noticeable even in that low gain setting. Personally, I kind of like it in that middle position. But when you go to throw on a boost, I do like having a bit more low end in the amp itself usually, because it kind of tightens up the sub lows when you throw on the boost, and it kind of gives you that little woofy palm mute chug thing going on. But I'm going to keep the feel on the middle, the middle tightness position, which is the one up top. So let me go ahead and turn the mod switch to the high gain rhythm setting, because I think that's really what this is meant to be for. Again, EQ is completely flat. I'm going to keep the feel where I like it. I'm going to keep the bright switch off for now. So the difference between that and the crunch setting, it's not as drastic as you would think, but it is enough. Because if you go back to the crunch, now the thing that kind of threw me was the difference between that rhythm setting and what they call the lead setting doesn't seem super apparent at all. So if anything, it just sounds kind of like there's a drop in the, maybe I even have it backwards. I mean, I went on their website and I tried to find out what was what. It could be that the middle position on this mod switch is the highest gain one and it's supposed to be the lead. And I think it sounds the best. If not, then it's kind of weird. Maybe for a lead channel, you want a little bit less gain and a little bit more focus. Who knows? Either way, both of them kind of work similarly. I do think the middle position with that little bit more to it is the best. So with that said, I'm going to mess with the EQ now and see kind of what we can dial in. So yeah, I like that. That sounds pretty good. I don't even think you would need a boost with that particular setting. The low end is pretty apparent, even if I turn that feel to the middle where it's more tight. Still a pretty resonant full sound coming out of that. So what I'm going to do now is turn on the bright switch and see kind of how much more top end we get out of it. The bright switch kind of shifts where the peak on that high end is. I actually kind of like it. I can scale back the top end a little bit, make it a little smoother. And the mids seem to respond better with the bright switch on. At least cut. And by the way, I'm running Fishman Moderns in this guitar. It's in drop C. I had the voice 2 activated the whole time. Now I'm going to go back to voice 1 real quick to see if it gives a little bit more bite. Voice 1 on the Fishman Moderns totally tightens up the low end a little bit. So I'm going to put the feel back to the, you know, the middle setting. See if I get a little bit more of that low end back. Yeah, I mean, that just sounds pretty good in the room. Hopefully on the recording it sounds as good as I'm hearing it. I mean, and I kind of have the EQ back to being just in the middle now. Mids are pretty much there in the center, trebles in the center, bright switch on, you know, what is the middle position on the mod switch. And then I have the feel switch kind of in that, you know, that middle ground position up on top. If I turn the feel down and get the most bass out of it, I actually really like it on the bottom position when it's got the gain up that high and with the bright switch on. That's probably where I would keep it just going forward. Now, let me see if I scale back the gain a little bit and I put a boost in front of it. I'll probably stick with the Boss SD1. No, actually, you know what? I'm going to go with the Fortin Blade. Even though it's a little bit less accessible of a pedal, I'm just curious to see what it sounds like. So drives scaled back. I got the Blade on. I'm going to get the volume back up to where I know it should be. And let's see what we got here. The Blade might be a little overkill for pushing this circuit. I turned the bright switch off, and I'm going to go to the SD1. I think maybe something a little more neutral or a little more normal. To be honest, a boost does not improve the sound of this pedal at all. In fact, I think the pedal is fine by itself. So maybe if you're going to get this, don't expect to put anything in front of it. Just use it as is. Okay, now I got it set back up where I like. Everything in the middle, kind of how I had it before. And I have all the switches kind of where I like them. Push the drive a little bit back to where I liked it. And, you know, before I move on to the Blackstar, here's the tone that I really like in the room. Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and move on to the solid state platform, and we can see kind of if, you know, if you don't have a tube amp on hand, but you're looking for, and you don't even, you know, some people don't even want tube amps. Some people don't like the, you know, the idea of having to maintain one of these. But something like this, the Amped 1 from Blackstar, is a fully, you know, 100-watt power amp. Let's see what it does through this. Maybe this is the route that you would want to go with an external preamp like this. All right, so I have the Amped 1 hooked up, ready to go. I got it all set up, volume matched to what I had before, going through that power amp. I have it set to 100 watts. I have it running into the flat response in front of the amp. And then for the power section, I have it on the 6L6 response setting. So let's just hear how it sounds with the settings that I dialed in on the tube amp. what I'm hearing different between the two amps. I actually like the low end response on this a little bit better. It's a little bit tighter, more focused than what was going on with this. But the top end on this is a little less smooth and a little more harsh to me. I mean, it's really subtle. Something you could probably dial in, maybe turn the bright switch off and see what happens. Yeah, I kind of like it without the bright switch on, going through this power amp. And I think if you were to mess with the feel switch and get it like to the super tight setting, yeah, it just cuts out all the low end, which might be kind of cool for like extended range stuff. I really like the way the mids behave on this. It's actually very similar to how the mid-range on the EVH works. It's nowhere near how the mid-range on this works. But for now, you know, I kind of like pushing that mid up a little bit and a little bit more treble. Kind of gives this power amp a little bit more presence, a little bit more, you know, punch. Yeah, I think it's really good. So this power amp does have a fair bit of tonal control. So if you were going to go this route, you know, there are various options you could do. You could do this Blackstar. There's also the Seymour Duncan power stage stuff. The orange pedal baby I thought was a really good one. I got to demo one of those a few months ago. It's a really loud example of what a solid state amp can do even at 100 watts, because it's a class AB amplifier, whereas these are class D. They're a little bit more linear. But to really get the tonality of this preamp, you know, setting it to the flat, EQ, everything in the middle, you can, you know, mess with the bass, mid, and treble, kind of like you do on the power stage. But these tube style response curves are pretty cool to have too. Like I said, the 6L6 is to me the best one for high gain. I'm not going to sit here and go through all of them because this is not what the video is about, but it's still a cool platform and much more affordable than something like, you know, a tube amp or like a tube power amp that you'd have to get for a rack mount. So the last thing I want to do, because I'm just curious, is I want to run this into my interface and through a cab IR to see if you can get some pretty good, believable, you know, amp tones, you know, going just straight digital. So let's go on to that. All right, so I have this running into my interface here, and I have pulled up the 2 Notes Torpedo Wall of Sound app. It's free. You can get this for free. I'm just using some of their stock IRs. You can go fancy and get some paid for IRs that, you know, you can use in any IR loader you want, but I'm running this straight into here. I have it, you know, peaking at a certain level that makes sense, and then I'm processing that distorted tone through that IR. And right now I have pulled up like something based off of an Engel cab with a you know, Vintage 30s. And if you want to know everything you ever wanted to know about the Vintage 30, just go over to John Brown's channel or the other John Brown, and he can tell you all about those. So here's what it sounds like just going straight into this Engel cab with a SM57 as the microphone. And so that's with no bright switch on. I have the feel on the tightest one, and the EQ is basically in the middle. I might bump the mids a little bit, a little more treble. Let's see what the bright switch does. The bright switch definitely opens up that top end. I might even pull back the highs just a little bit. I'm going to turn that feel switch down to the most saggy. I feel like that gives it the most naturalistic in the room kind of low end. like a real Ingle cab, I feel like this IR is very high, mid, top end present. I think they're front-loaded cabs, and so they do tend to push a little bit more of that top end, as opposed to like the rectifier cabs that are rear-loaded and seem to have a little bit more low end. I do have an oversized recto cab though here from 2 Notes. Let's see what that sounds like. Make sure we got the SM57 on there. Yeah, way more scooped. I'm gonna turn the mids up, get the highs back a little bit. I don't know, let's see. Yeah, and so with the bright switch on, obviously there's a little bit of that fizz. Makes sense for the recto cab. The other cab I like that, 2 Notes makes, and I don't know if this was a free one. I know I got a handful of these when I bought my Captor, but there's like an orange cab. I think it's an orange cab. It's either that or it's a Bogner. I can't really tell. Some of the naming conventions are a little bit odd. But with the Dynamic 57, this Tanger fat cab, I'm pretty sure it's an orange cab. I think it's meant to be like Tang orange. This is like one of my favorite ones that they make that I can use here. It's just like way more fat sounding, and I think it just sounds really good. And with that cab IR, you can kind of put that feel back in the really tight category, and you can turn the bright switch on and play with those mids and get just a really nice, just in-your-face sound. Anyway, I think that's, just demonstrates how well put together this preamp is for high gain stuff, that you can just plug it into your interface, throw in an IR, and that sounds, nearly as good as any plugin you can buy, for sure. And it even sounds pretty good compared to like, in the room miking. So, hopefully if you feel like checking out this pedal, you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, $60 Amazon, you can do quite a bit of stuff with it. So that's my spiel. Later.